And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Benched with Bubba as we continue your season team previews one by one to get through all 30 baseball teams to get you ready for the 2023 fantasy baseball season. We go to the NL Central today to a fun team that every year it looks like they're going to try to contend, and they make a trade that makes you shake your head, but then they still contend, and it's just a fun dynamic. Maybe it's because it's a Central. I don't know. But we're going to talk about the Milwaukee Brewers, a place that I love. I love the Wisconsin area. And in order to help me to break this team down, which does have some definite fantasy relevance, especially on the mound, as most people know, you can find this gentleman on Twitter at Pile of Dial. He's a part of the In the Cut Fantasy podcast that is pumping out content left and right as one of the newest fantasy baseball, basketball shows on the interwebs. Mr. John Fish, how are we doing, my friend?
Good, Bubba. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about my Brewers a little bit. They have disappointed me lately, but let's see if I can have some nice things to say about them tonight.
I bet you will. Before we get into that, why don't you, like I mentioned, you guys got the In the Cut Fantasy Show. Let the listeners know what you guys got going on, because you guys are pumping out the content these days.
Yeah, we're just finishing up our position breakdowns, and like we were kind of talking off air, I'm looking forward to kind of wrapping that up. Once you do one position, you have to do them all, and then we got to the outfield, and we're like, wow, there's like so many outfielders. So that was 2 shows, and then starting pitching, we did our first episode, and then we got 2 more episodes still for the starting pitching, and then that's wrapped up, and then we'll dive into some other things, have some guests on, and we haven't really talked about exactly what we're going to do, but there should be some good things coming. So I'm looking forward to that.
I have no doubt in my mind, because I've talked to you and heard you on other shows. You definitely know what you're doing when it comes to the fantasy world, and your buddy Mr. Venancio is very, very sharp as well. So I can see it being a lot of fun, high quality content across for your listening pleasures. All right, let's talk Brew Crew. This is a fun one here, and we'll start off with the leadoff batter in Milwaukee. There's one Christian Yelich, who over the last 2 weeks, over the last 9 draft champions drafts, has a wonderful ADP of 124. So it's actually kind of creeping up a little from what it was a few weeks back. Still not, what recent years are, but I think I know I've talked about it in other shows. You probably have as well. If you did 2 outfield previews, you might not have got to him. Maybe you did, but we kind of know who he is now. Felt like last year's 14 and 19 was what you're expecting, kind of. So, what's your thoughts on Yelich going into 2023?
Yeah, he's a little bit tricky. Like you said, you just kind of have to realize he is kind of what he is now. I do think that there is another level, though. I mean, if you look at like kind of what he did last year, he's 98th percentile in max exit velo, so he's still hitting the ball hard. He's walking a ton, which is good for hitting leadoff. He should score a lot of runs. He had a 94th percentile in walk percent, so he's really drawing walks well. It's kind of the power and kind of the injury issues, like the back. It didn't seem like the back really flared up at all last year, so that was kind of good to see. But obviously that can kind of happen at any moment. So the main issue with him is he's hitting the ball on the ground again too much. He's kind of reverting back to his old ways. But if he can get 15 plus home runs, 15 plus stolen bases, and if he continues to walk at the rate he is, he should be able to score a lot of runs, and he's not going to kill you in batting average. It's not going to be super elite, I don't think, anymore, but I don't think he's going to kill you. So I think he's worth the pick where he's going, just for the fact is if he can change that launch angle a little bit and get the ball in the air a little bit more, he's still hitting the ball hard enough to spike a 25 home run season. So I already have a couple shares, and I like where he's going.
I'm 100% on board with you on Yelich. I used to not like his price back in the day. That's what kind of scared me off. But where he's going now, I'll take the risk with his back, which they seem to kind of be, I don't know if managing better is the right word, but it seems like they've kind of got it in check the best they can. And backs, always can flare up. There's no doubt about it. But if you tell me a guy is going to probably have a 15-15 floor with all those runs scored with the upside, which is kind of what I'm agreeing with you on, I don't mind it at that ADP at all, especially when outfield starts. There's like cliffs to the outfield, and it starts. So it's definitely a nice spot to grab him around 120, 125 and get that kind of safety net with Christian Yelich. Let's go to the shortstop position now, and we have Willy Adames, ADP around 95 the last couple of weeks, 31 bombs last year, 8 stolen bases, both career highs. Hit 238, so the average was a career low. That was kind of a thing, but so was the BABIP. That was crazy with what he did. We've seen the power go up every year since he's gone on the bigs outside of obviously the 2020 season. The kid's good, and I say kid because he's going to be 27 years old this year. He's still super young. So, what's your thoughts on Willy Adames? Because I've been a fan for a long time, and to see him hit 31 home runs is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Willy. He is probably the best hitter of the team now, I would say. I really like where he's hitting in the lineup. We saw the power, the counting stats are there at 98 RBIs, 83 runs, and he did chip in some speed. So that was always nice to see. One thing I'm kind of curious to see is, can he, with the new rules, can he go from 8 stolen bases to like 12, 13 stolen bases? I think it's possible. He still strikes out a little bit too much, but obviously you're not going to get everything perfect. And he's kind of another bat that I like where he's going and for the Brewers lineup. As much as I don't really like the Brewers offense as a whole, I do like a lot of the individual players. Well, not a lot, I shouldn't say a lot, but a few of the individual players. But yeah, the strikeout rate's kind of a little bit concerning, 26.9% last year, but as actually an improvement from 2021. So yeah, I like Willy at his price.
Yeah, I've been looking for him. Like I keep saying, like shortstop, it's a deep position, but it feels like the quality of depth is different than years past. Like there's still guys, but in years past, it felt like there's like 15, 16 dudes. You're like, I'll got no problem with any of them. Let's like bring them on. And now it's kind of like where Willy and Jeremy Pena go. It's kind of like a cliff to another level, which is still a very good level, but it just feels different. So I'm trying to lead with Adames or Pena in most of my drafts at worst if I can. If I don't, I can make it work. But yeah, I'm a big Team Adames guy for sure. Another guy I love, and maybe it's because of his just great physique. I don't know, but one Rowdy Tellez. I've always been a fan, just because I always joke, and it's like some diehard fantasy players just kind of get annoyed with it. But I'm like, in the end, baseball's supposed to be fun. That's what this is. And if anybody has fun playing baseball, Rowdy's one of them. Like the dude just smiles and has a good time. And he finally got to really, really play last year. He played 153 games, hit 35 bombs, kind of showcased what he can do. We saw the walk rate over 10% for the first time. Batting average plummeted to 219. But I know Venancio's not one, but if you're an X stats believer, he had gigantic gaps in the X stats. Like, I'm not saying he should have got those numbers, but maybe better than what he had. So what's your thoughts on Tellez? Because the one other caveat I will mention is, in years past, there always seemed to be a platoon guy on the bench, like designated to play first base. I guess you could say Keston here is there. I guess William Contreras could play there. But for now, it looks like it's Rowdy's job. So how do we look at him this year at ADP, like 162?
Yeah, he's one of my biggest targets in the draft, in the entire draft, not just the Brewers. So it's kind of funny. Ryan and I were going over our first base episode, and we're kind of going down the players, and we kind of got down to Rowdy, and neither one of us were like super in on him. But by the end of the episode, just talking it through and like going over everything, we both were kind of had some interest in him. And I have missed him, I think, one draft since that episode. But the one thing I couldn't believe, so yeah, we see the batting average. It was poor. But a 20.2% K rate. Like you would think with a poor average like that, there would be a lot of strikeouts, and there just really isn't. I mean, 20.2% is fantastic, especially for a slugger. What we saw is terrible BABIP. Now he hits a lot of fly balls, so you can't expect the BABIP to be very good, but 215 is like absurdly low. So yeah, this is he fits like my exact strategy that I like to do in drafts as well, where I go with I get my stolen base early, I get my aces, I land a closer, my power. This is where I hammer power in the middle rounds, and he's like the perfect target. He's right in his prime, hitter's park, good spot in the lineup. Now he does struggle against lefties a little bit, but it is what it is, right? Like a lot of lefties struggle against lefties. So it's not like he's the only one. So yeah, the massive power upside should be able to drive in a lot of runs hitting in that lineup.
Yeah, I love it. The like you mentioned, the BABIP's absurdly low, especially for a dude that hits the ball as hard as he does. Like that's just one of those unlucky seasons. That's why I said I don't love X stats, but I like when I see the big gaps in guys. And he had just like 40 points in batting average. Just cut that in half, and he hits 235 or something. And we're like over the moon for a guy for all those stats he brings. And you mentioned I joked about the platoons, and you talked about it. he still played 153 games, so they even let him roll last year. Like they weren't like just because it felt like the years before that between Toronto and Milwaukee was almost like a guaranteed. If a lefty's on the mound, Rowdy's not playing. Now they've kind of gotten over that, it feels like, which is big, like you said. So it's an interesting philosophy because I do, for those that live under a rock somewhere, Mr. Fish was mentioning his strategy, aces and bases. This is where our bases and aces, maybe I backed it up, I don't remember. But it's a T-shirt that RotoWare still has not made yet, just throwing it out there. And it needs to happen. But it does make a lot of sense because I always talk about how like power has been a weakness of mine on my bad teams in recent years. So I've tried to make a focus to like pay attention to it more. And I walk away with like a Pete Alonso, or I go and get some guys early. But if I didn't, circling a guy like Rowdy is probably a pretty good call. I like that a lot because there's no reason if he plays 150 plus games, he's not hitting 30 to 40 home runs again. There's like zero reason why that does not happen. So
yeah, he hits the ball super hard and, fly balls. Like that's hitting the ball hard and fly balls. That leads to home runs. So
yep, I love it. Love it.
All aboard the Rowdy train.
All right, a guy that I love a lot, and you can totally rain on my parade if you think I'm crazy, but is William Contreras, one of the newest members of the Milwaukee Brewers. ADP of around 120, came over in the trade with the Braves, played 97 games last year at 20 home runs. He's going to be the dude now catching. He's always actually hit for pretty decent average, too, for a catcher, which is good to see. But what I love is just the quality of contact metrics, the barrel rates, the hard hit rates. Just like every year he's had a chance, has crushed it. And last year in his biggest sample continued to crush it. What's your thoughts on William Contreras now going to Milwaukee, where he should, in theory, probably play at least 130 games instead of 97, maybe even more than 130? So I'm a big fan, but I'm also probably overstating it. So what are you hearing or thinking from Milwaukee?
I like Contreras a lot. I didn't like him before until he got traded, essentially, and not just because he got traded to my Brewers, but I was really worried about the playing time with Atlanta. But I have no concerns about the playing time with Milwaukee because we haven't had a good catcher since Jonathan Lucroy, a good hitting catcher, anyways. I mean, Omar Narvaez was just okay, but obviously, you get William Contreras, you traded for him, so he's going to be the catcher. He's going to play a lot. There's some things I like about him. There's some things I don't like. One thing that I definitely like is he does walk at a pretty good rate, so 10.4% last year, and we see the power. He's got 97th percentile max exit velocity. So that's, he can hit the ball hard. He barrels it. It should play very well in that park. Some things that are just a little bit concerning for me with him is he does hit a lot of ground balls, 53% ground ball rate last year. And he had a really high BABIP. So I don't think we can fully expect, that batting average again that he had last year, but I think he's still going to be a really good hitting catcher, which, where he's going, you're kind of getting to the end of that, kind of the end of a tier essentially. And then catching, it's kind of, if it gets pretty bad, pretty ugly after that. So I do like where he's going. But again, I have a little bit concerns with the K rate, the ground ball percentage, and the high BABIP, but more playing time is always a good thing. So I'm on board with William Contreras.
Yeah, and you nailed it. The playing times what got me too, because I think I had Contreras as my 11th or 12th catcher, just because of what he can still do, playing close to 100 games in Atlanta, give or take. But once he got to that, I'm thinking 130 for sure. I wouldn't be shocked because he'll get some DH run. They traded for that bat. They want him in the lineup, and you look at the rest after your Adames and your Tellez, he's pretty much necessary to start bringing in runs in the middle of that order. So they're going to keep that bat in the lineup. He might get some DH run out there. If he might get 145 games by the time all things are said and done. And that's just tremendous at a catcher's position that last year, outside of a handful of guys, most guys played 110, 90 to 110 games. There wasn't a ton of deep. It was like the running back position in football now. It was just a lot of platooning going on. So the fact he gets that bump, I think is going to be tremendous. We'll see how it pans out, but definitely a huge William Contreras fan. Now things get interesting in Milwaukee. We're going to have guys that are going to be fantasy relevant from time to time. The question I have for Fish with these guys is how often. So this is going to be fun. We'll start with Jesse Winker coming back to the NL Central in his trade from Seattle. His ADP over the last few weeks, 270. It's been well documented. 14 home runs, hit 219. Still walked a ton, though, in Seattle. And the one thing I noticed, because I was actually writing something about him recently, after it felt like he was hurt and there's all kinds of drama all last year, which there was. But he played in 136 games, which was the most in his career last season. That stood out to me a little bit. If there's any like optimism from Jesse Winker, that stood out. But what's your thoughts with Winker and the Brew Crew?
Yeah, finally he stays healthy, and of course he is having a poor season. So you don't ever want somebody to get hurt. But last year it'd have been like, if you could have got hurt, that'd have been all right because I could have got you out of my lineup. But I was a huge fan of Winker last year. I think I had like 20 shares of Winker, and then he got traded, and he was completely off my board once he got traded. I just loved the fact that he was hitting in Cincinnati, going to Seattle, completely different story, new league, all that. So I was off after it, but it's, the damage is already done essentially. So this year, I'm happy that he's back in the NL Central, and he's in a nice hitter's park. But I don't know. I don't know what to think. The Brewers have just a lot of outfielders. It's kind of a little bit of a logjam. They got some guys coming up that I'll talk about a little bit. The DH is open. Can he regain what he had in 2021 with Cincinnati? I think so, because he's 29 years old. So I think he can. Like you said, he's still drawing walks at a good clip. We did see some of the max exit velo and the hard hit percent and some of those things kind of disappear last year, but I think I'm okay taking a shot on him, but he's definitely not like a huge target for me or anything like that.
Yeah, we're kind of in the same boat there. It's like at his price, I'm willing to kind of take a mulligan last year. Because there seemed like there's a lot of drama too going on, like a lot of weird stuff going on last year with him. Because when I looked, I mentioned he played 136 games, but then you mentioned the barrels, the hard hit, all just dropped, like over half of what he's used to. It just drops. Yeah. And so it's like, what the hell happened? Like, was he really hurt? And we didn't really know he was hurt. We know he kind of was playing in and out of injuries, so maybe there's something there. I don't know. So I'm kind of willing to give a grain of salt, but I'm with you. Also, it's not like a focus of mine in a draft. It kind of depends on how it falls, and if it's like I could take the chance or whatnot, sure. But yeah, like when he was in Cincinnati, it was all aboard the Winker train, and now it's a little different. So
there was a video that went around. I don't know when exactly in the season it was. I feel like it was like 1 month into the season. It said like something like Winker's not hitting in Cincinnati anymore, and it was just a whole bunch of flyouts to the fence.
Yeah,
and obviously.
Change.
Yeah, and then you just don't know like how that affects a hitter mentally. Like those are home runs the year before, especially with offense being down to start the year last year. So I think just things kind of spiraled from there. So I'm hoping the change of the scenery back to a division he's familiar with. I'm hoping that can kickstart him a little bit. And honestly, I don't mind this trade for the Brewers. Like I know a lot of people like Colton Wong and stuff like that. I did too. Like he was fine, but we got guys coming up like Bryce Terang. We'll talk about him in a little bit. Like he's like ready to go. So it's like, let's see if we can get a bounce back from Winker and, open up a spot for Terang to take over at second.
Yeah, it's a great point because it'll be a much better ballpark for Winker to hit in. And what we've kind of already hinted on talking about the top of the lineup here, they need a bat like Winker to hopefully show up and find 15 to 20 home runs. Like Colton Wong's a good defender, but he's not going to be that 15 to 20 home run. Like Winker, we know if he plays 130 plus games, you wouldn't be shocked if he had 25 plus home runs. Like the dude's got that skill on that bat. Wong was never doing that. And you mentioned guys behind him. So that's like, it's a baseball trade through and through that might have a nice fantasy impact for us as well. Mm-hmm. Let's talk Luis Urias. This is a guy going at an ADP of 234-ish, second base, third base, shortstop eligible, which is always very, very nice. Only 2 years removed from 150 games played and 23 home runs, hit 16 home runs last year. A lot of people are just in love with Luis Urias. Some other guys kind of can't get grips on him. I think the multi-position fact is great, and it looks like he's going to be the starting third baseman. So what do you got on Luis Urias?
Oh, this one's tough. He's only 25, so you can't write him off or anything like that, but he really struggled last year. So I don't know what they're going to do because, like I mentioned, Bryce Terang is coming up. They say he's ready to go for second, and then they signed Brian Anderson. And Brian Anderson, I don't know, like they're both right-handed hitters. Like I'm not sure if Brian Anderson is going to be the utility or if Luis Urias is going to be the utility. Like I'm nervous about the playing time. If let's say Urias gets the starting nod right away, and he struggles out of the gate, I could see him moving to the bench like really easily. I think the leash is kind of short. But again, he's only 25, so you can't write off a guy it's only 25 because a lot of people like this guy going into last year, and he's a tough one for me. I don't have any shares. He's not necessarily a target for me, but yeah, I guess I really don't know.
I feel you. That's why it's one of those tough ones. It's like sometimes in DCs, when you get later, you're starting trying to like waver between guys. That eligibility plays a factor in DCs a little more than others. Not saying it's the right thing to do, but it stands out for sure. But yeah, I haven't really made a point to go get him, where last year I was much more interested in him because of what we saw in 2021. And he is still young though. So it wouldn't surprise me if he starts, figuring it out again, hitting like 240 with 25 jacks. You never know, but he's a tricky one for sure. You mentioned Bryce Trang a few times. We'll jump to him real quick here. It's a guy I've actually drafted a lot late in drafting holds, like really late, because I think he's starting out the gate, if not real soon. So what's your thoughts on him? We saw the power increase in the minors last year, but that speed, my God, like he just ran wild. So what are we thinking for 2023 with the Brew Crew?
Yeah, I'm not a huge prospect guy, so I don't really know a ton about them, but yeah, he had 13 home runs. He had a 360 OBP last year at AAA. 34 out of 36 on the bases. So to me, it seems like there's really a lot to like with him. And just from what I'm kind of hearing, what everybody's saying is that he's essentially ready to go, and that's why they were able to trade a guy like Colton Wong, who's kind of, he's not washed up, but he's, I don't know how old he is, 32, 33, something like that. So, that's why they needed to open up a spot for him. But a couple things that I really like about Bryce Trang is in the minors. It's a couple things that I always look at: the K percent and the walk percent, 19.6% K and 10.8 walk percent. So he's really good at bat the ball and getting on base. So that's what this team needs. And I think it sounds like he's ready to go. So I'm ready to see it.
ADP of 427, which is real nice. And they're projecting to hit 9th on Ruster Resource, not the end all be all, but that's a heck of a turnaround spot if you can get on base before Yelich and Adames and Rowdy and stuff. Like that could be a ton of runs and a lot of times to run. So it could be a fun little season in there if he does get that shot. When you go to the outfield, there's Tyrone Taylor, who's had his moments every year, and then other moments you're kind of like, where'd Tyrone Taylor go? But and then there's Garrett Mitchell. I think that's a guy you're kind of hinting at earlier. I keep looking at his projections, man. When I'm late in drafts, I'm like, that looks so good. But like, is he actually going to be the dude, or what's going on? So how do you look at these kind of other outfield spots there in Milwaukee?
Yeah, there's so this is kind of what I was alluding to with the logjam. So we got Tyrone Taylor, who he didn't really break out much last year. Obviously, we know he's got some good power, but I don't know what to think about him. I think he's going to be like the kind of the first man out. So I don't know. I don't see much happening with him this year. He might get like the starting nod, but after that, I think it's going to be kind of. I think there's some other guys, and I'll mention a couple of those guys in a second here. But when it comes to Garrett Mitchell, so Garrett Mitchell was their first round pick, a few years back out of UCLA, and he had some big hits for him last year. He stole some bases. The surface stats look pretty good: 311, 2 home runs, 8 steals. But one thing that a lot of people maybe aren't talking about much is his K percent.
I saw that. My God.
He strikes out a ton. It almost reminds me a little bit of Keston Hiura. It's kind of like fool's gold when he came up. 41.2% K rate last year and at 548 BABIP. So Garrett Mitchell's not a target for me. I don't have any shares. I know some people are on him, but AAA is obviously, this is only 61 ABs and it's his first major league action. So you don't want to take, too much out of it, I guess. I mean, it's way too soon to write him off. He did only have a 21.2% K rate in AAA before he came up. But I guess in AA, he did strike out quite a bit too, 27.8. But Yeah, I think Garrett Mitchell's probably going to get the first crack, and we'll see how he does. He'll probably have a decent leash just because he is their first round pick, and again, he had some big hits for him last year, so it's I'm looking forward to seeing how he can adjust to the major league pitching, because that's a huge K rate. So yeah, we'll see how it goes with him. But one guy, and again, this is a Ryan Venancio special. This again, I don't know a ton about the prospects. So Ryan and I first start talking about our podcast, and he starts talking about Sal Frelick, and I'm like, who? Like, who's that? And he's like, he's going to be their starting center fielder, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't think he's going to be the starting center fielder right away, but he definitely could be. But Sal Frelick was terrific last year across 3 levels: 11.3% K rate, a 9.3% walk rate, 11 home runs, 24 steals, and a 404 OBP.
Yeah,
like that's the kind of player that I'm looking for. Again, I like to see a low K rate in the minors because the pitching only gets better, obviously, in the majors. So if you're already striking out at a huge clip in the minors, it could get real ugly in the majors. So Sal Frelick is Ryan's got me. He's got me drafted him. I mean, obviously, if it doesn't work out, Ryan's not going to hear the end of it. But that's one guy for sure. And then there's another guy, Joey Wiemer.
Yes.
His numbers across AA and AAA last year were insane. He did have a 27.1% K rate, so that's a little concerning, but 21 home runs and 32 steals, and he only got caught 3 times on the base. So 32 out of 35. And Joey Wiemer, I think he's 6'5". So
yeah, he's a big dude.
Yeah. So
I saw him in the flesh at AFL 2 years ago. He's a glorious man. The flow he has is electric.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. This is what I'm saying. Like, there's just such a logjam. I don't think there's going to be a long leash really for anybody. I think they're going to kind of ride the hot hand and kind of go from there. There's, they traded Hunter Renfroe, which I was not happy about because, I mean, they need that slugger in the middle of the lineup because the offense just isn't good enough to manufacture a bunch of runs, I don't think. But it'll be interesting to see how this outfield situation works out and the DH.
Yeah, I'm with you because Mitchell, like I'm with you. He'll get his shot. Then you have Frelick, his ADP is like 460, and I've seen nothing but good things about him. Like you're saying, like there's a lot of very positive chatter. But with Joey, like I'm not kidding. We saw him 2 years ago that he like hits a triple off the right field wall, throws dudes out third, like gets hit, steals a bag. The dude, he was just an electric factory. No matter what he did, it was just insane. And then he had a great minor league season last year, just watching him because all of a sudden I got an interest in him. Like, this guy's freaking great. I want to check this out. And then I'm like, oh man, they got Mitchell and Frelick blocking him. It's either going to be great because they'll have all 3 in the outfield at one point in time, and they'll be all young, affordable outfielders, or it's like you said, it'll be a long log jam of like, oh, okay, who's going to be the dude this week? But Joey's going after pick 700 right now. Like, if you just want to take a late flyer on a dude that got a lot of power and speed, you just don't know how much he can play. Right. It's a very good position for the Brewers to be in. Annoying for fantasy purposes, but great for the Brewers to have that kind of talent sitting there after all these trades that have been made and whatnot. So, big fan of that. One last guy I'll ask you about because I think I have to ask you about it, and you can just tell me to F off if you feel like it. Keston Hiura.
Yeah, I mean, Keston Hiura again. He's another guy. He had like he had some huge hits last year, yes. Like some game-winning home runs, and I do think Keston Hiura is going to be a platoon guy. I think. I really don't know. If I remember correctly, I think he was actually decent against righties and not as good against lefties. Like, not like you would think a platoon would work, but the Brewers are a couple years ago were like one of the worst hitting teams against lefties, and that's why they addressed that by getting McCutchen last year. Well, McCutchen's gone. And now you're looking at a lineup with still, a bunch of lefties, Yelich and Rowdy and Winker, Mitchell, Terang's a lefty. So it's like, I don't know how much better they're going to be against lefties this year. Like, they could struggle against lefties again. But, I think Keston Hiura, he's a good guy to have off the bench. That's kind of, I don't have anything real bad to say about him. Obviously, he hasn't worked out like we wanted to, but What are you going to do? They're not all going to hit.
Yeah, tough for fantasy. Like, I'd love him to break out again because it was fun when he first got it going, but it's going to be tricky, I think, to make it happen. Let's go to the bump. Let's talk some starting pitching, with the Brewers always have some. And we'll start with Corbin Burnes, second pitcher off the board, ADP of 14. Obviously, it's Ohtani, the unicorn, and then it's Burnes and Cole right now. I don't have a lot to say about Burnes. Like, the dude's amazing. Pick your poison. I have Cole ahead of Burnes. I will not argue with anybody that has Burnes. I won't argue it. Like, they're like 1A, 1B. Pick your poison. What's your thoughts on Corbin Burnes?
Yeah, he's a stud. He's my SP1. Sub 1 whip 2 years in a row. Obviously, tons of strikeouts. 234 in 2021 and 243 last year. I don't have one bad thing to say about him.
Yeah,
he's got 4 elite pitches. He's like, that's he's my SP1.
Yeah, he's a G. There's nothing really to worry about with Mr. Burnes. But now we go to Woodruff, 10th pitcher off the board, ADP at 36. That ADP keeps climbing. I'm getting pretty pissed off about it, to be honest, because I was loving that. Like, I could get the Burnes Nola like combo, and it was like the best thing since sliced bread. And now that ain't happening because they're both getting bumped up now. I love Woody. Absolutely love him. Like, there was a scare last year where he couldn't even feel his fingers. Got that fixed. Then he came back and he pitched like the Cy Young guy he was, like, or at least close to, like, just absolutely ridiculous numbers after that injury. I ain't worried about him. I've always been Team Woody. I feel like he's just so boring compared to Burnes. It's just like no one realizes how good he is. So, again, another guy I don't have a ton to say, but I have him ranked in my top 5 starting pitchers. I think he's that good. What's your thoughts on Brandon Woodruff?
Yeah, I like everything about Woodruff except for one concern. Now, I've already taken Brandon Woodruff a few times, so I'm not off of him. But when you're drafting players in the first couple rounds, you kind of have to look at everything, right? So you have to nitpick a little bit. And my only issue is his career high in innings is 179 and a third. And his second highest was last year at 153. Third highest was 121 and 2/3 in 2019. Now, he didn't get hurt at all in the short season. So the short season plus 2021, relatively healthy. So, but again, we have to nitpick here. So personally, I'm taking Nola over Woodruff just because we have it's a Brewers pod. So I don't want to talk too much about Nola, but Nola's got
Nola. Nola, go preach. I don't care.
Yeah. So Nola's got 4 seasons, I think, over 200 strikeouts. Mm-hmm. And, I just feel like he's safer in innings. They're both going to have elite ratios, I think. But Nola's walk rate is just insane. So I lean slightly towards Nola. But, yeah, like I said, I already have plenty of shares of Woodruff, and he's totally fine where he's going. I just have slight concern about the innings. I want to see it. I'm a big fan of wanting to see like a little bit of a track record. I want to see a couple of years of 180 plus innings, and we just don't have that with Woodruff.
No, I'm glad you mentioned all that because that is so true how we have to nitpick, and I'm with you. Like, Nola and Woody are right next to each other, and if you just want the guy you've seen do it, that's what Nola's done, and he gets with elite ratios and innings and strike. Like, he just does it all. Yeah, like people just like remember those bad starts where it's like one bad inning. They get frustrated with Nola. But if you look at the end stat line every year, it's like an elite pitcher that pitches a ton of innings. So I'm 100% with you on that. Both just great options if you wait just a little bit longer to get your starting pitching on draft day.
Yep.
Now it gets fun. In the starting rotation. Eric Lauer, ADP of 278 over the last 2 weeks. This is a guy that we've seen get 11 wins last year. Might have shocked some. 158 innings, strikeouts. We saw some velocity changes at times. He seems like he's kind of keeps reinventing himself throughout this portion. He's only 28, which shocked me. For some reason, I thought he was like an old soul out there. But what's your thoughts on Eric Lauer? Because he's a guy on draft day. I just can't. I just don't know what to do with him.
Yeah, he's an interesting one. He started out the season absolutely on fire. He was insane. Tons of strikeouts, which we haven't, I don't think, ever seen from him. He had 13 strikeout game, followed that up with an 11 strikeout game. Absolutely on fire. Hit a bump in the road middle of the season, but then he closed his last 2 starts with 11 innings and no runs and 16 strikeouts. So if you look at the big picture, right, that's what we kind of have to look at here. 3.3 walks per nine. That's not good. He gives up a lot of home runs, 1.5 home runs per nine, and the BABIP was pretty low at 271. Swinging strikes, not great. So, is he a fine starter in a major league rotation? Sure. Yeah, and I got no problem with that. But am I actually targeting him for my fantasy rotation? I'm not. Walks and home runs, and that in a hitter's park is really tough for me to get on board with that.
Yeah, like I say, he's a tough one for me. I don't think I clicked his name once. Was electric at times, but it was very, very tough one for me to wrap my head around. A guy I loved going into last year, and then he had his injuries, Freddie Peralta. And this is another guy that's tough for me. His ADP is 140, which we know talent-wise, that's a gift. If we knew he was throwing 150-plus innings, that'd be an amazing ADP, and he wouldn't have that ADP, of course. Last year, he finished with 78 innings pitched, came back in August, and they kind of slow played him. He got, I think I saw 39 innings in his 10 appearances, 9 starts, 1 bullpen. Strikeouts were down last year. What's your thoughts on Freddie Peralta? Because I haven't really heard a ton about his injury, his rehab, like how he's doing coming into the season, but just not seeing the innings again last year. After he had 144 in 2021, which was great to see, but still so young. I don't know. I don't have a feeling on what they're going to do with him.
Yeah, he was my 3rd round pick in my Las Vegas main event, and obviously it did not go well. 9 runs allowed in the first 2 starts, over 7 innings. And then obviously he missed a huge chunk of time. But if you look at the end of season stats again, he did have a low BABIP, 264 BABIP, which is, obviously pretty low. But his left on base percent was only 68.9. So, kind of got a little bit unlucky there. But the swinging strike was still there, 12.3%. The Ks per nine, 9.9. So that was still there. And believe it or not, his FIP last year was actually better than his breakout year of 2021. So where does that leave us? It's just kind of, you mentioned it, like it's all going to come down to the innings and how many can he throw. And I'm on board because I like the price. I think I got a couple shares already, but he's not a huge target for me just because, a guy like that, you just don't want to be overexposed to. But yeah, I think the price is right now. So I definitely have a couple shares.
Okay, good to know. Because talent's legit. So I'm just curious on where he's going with that one. Now, this is kind of, I don't know if ironic's the right word, but wasn't planned to have the podcast tonight after the Aaron Ashby news dropped earlier today on Wednesday, February 8th. This was the kind of guy that everyone was taking as their kind of popular later round sleeper. His ADP is around 250. That's going to start dropping. But news came out today that he's dealing with shoulder fatigue. He will not be ready for spring training, and they're going to slow play it. Now, before I give you your chance to talk on this, my thoughts are twofold. This is a great way to limit innings like they probably wanted to with Aaron Ashby. And I'm not comparing Aaron Ashby to Zach Wheeler, but this is the same thing happened to Zach Wheeler last year. He got like a 2 to 3 slow start, and then looked just fine. Again, not saying they're the same pitcher, but I'm not like some people I saw just full panic mode out the gate. And I'm like, let's just like slow down for a second and see where it goes. I know Ashby was hurt last year, but let's just see. Okay, now Mr. Brewer, what do you got on Aaron Ashby?
Yeah, so the shoulder issue obviously has me essentially off him just because we don't know how severe the issue is. It just came out the news. So if I was drafting today, I probably would not be taking him. But let's say the shoulder issue wasn't, that wasn't an issue. We didn't know about it. There's a lot to like with Ashby. There's a lot to not like. It's a really interesting player. 10.6 K per nine, awesome. 3.9 walk per nine, terrible. 340 BABIP last year. Okay, he obviously it was pretty unlucky. 68.9% left on base last year, so he got lucky there. It's like swinging strikes there, tons of ground balls. So there's a lot to like. You could see the upside for sure. I didn't have any shares yet just because, I don't like to draft pitchers that walk a lot of guys. Like that's what it comes down to. They don't go deep into games, which means you're getting less wins. Obviously your whip is being affected if you're walking a lot of guys. And then The heavy ground ball pitchers really make me nervous this year. Maybe it's not going to be as big of a deal as I think, but just the new shift issues. I don't know. I don't know what to think. What are your thoughts about like the heavy ground ball pitchers?
It's tricky. I'm with you because you'd think like a Framber Valdez would get dinged pretty heavy for it, but then they've shown some stats where even when he was shifting, maybe because he's a lefty and you don't see the shift as heavy on the right-handed bats, but so maybe he's a fluke in this narrative. But I just feel like these teams are smart enough to kind of still maneuver it properly because, like, you can have the second base or the shortstop basically at second base, just can't be past it type thing. So you can kind of move things around. That the second that I think he starts to wind up or moves, you can start shifting. I don't know. I'm curious to see how it works. That's probably not the best way to stop, to play baseball, but I don't think they're just going to walk away from it all either. So I'm not. Yes, there will be benefits to it for the hitters, no doubt about that. I'm not doubting that at all. I don't know how severe to make it for the pitchers, if that makes any sense at all. So it's a tricky one for me for sure.
Yeah, you make a good point with the left-handers because obviously the left-handed hitters off of righties with the shift is so severe to the right side of the field like that that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, like the left side, they're probably not shifting as much.
You don't see that shift very often. Like right. The second baseman playing left field, we don't see that every day.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm kind of like thinking, maybe we'll see. But there will definitely be some guys that benefit. There's no two ways around that one. But yeah, I'm trying to just kind of stay neutral and not make it completely affect the player production. But it's probably not the smartest move because someone will figure out like a Phil Dussault or something. So yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Any other starters? Like there's Wade Miley, maybe Adrian Hauser gets some run. Anybody else that for fantasy-wise that stands out to you, or you want to move to one of the most electric closers in baseball?
Nope, the rest of those starters are not going to be on my teams.
Yep. This man right here, Mr. Devin Williams, I am a tremendous fan of. I got heckled in a way too early DC that we did, and I mean, it was August or September for taking Devin Williams in like round 5 as my starting reliever, and everybody thought I was an idiot. I explained my case then, and they still thought I was an idiot. Well, I've had apologies since then when people realized why I did it, and it's glorious to have an airwaves to share that thought with. So, what's your thoughts on Devin Williams? Because one of the best relievers, period, in baseball, and now he gets to be the closer for Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty safe bet to be, to close the games because the Brewers bullpen it's not as good as it has been in years past. So he's the guy, obviously in a super elite pitcher. The one reason I haven't drafted him yet is if the Brewers are going to trade Hader with a 4-game lead in the division,
mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't they trade Devin Williams? I understand he's under a contract for a couple more years, but it's like, yeah, but if you're out of it, like, I don't know. I think if you're out of it, you should always trade like a reliever at their highest value. And yeah, if they're going to do it with a 4-game lead with Hader, then, why wouldn't they do it with Williams? I guess that's my only concern. But yeah, I mean, obviously the Caper 9, the swinging straight, everything is like super elite with this guy. Outside of the walks, he does walk, a little bit too much, but when you strike out guys at the rate he does, it's the walks don't hurt you as much as some other pitchers. So
it's a great point with Devin Williams, and I've had this discussion with Bloomfield quite a bit. That I'm in a DC with him right now, and I took Ryan Presley instead of Devin Williams. He started texting me going, you took my guy and you had your guy? And I'm like, I said, especially in a 15-team league, I'm taking the dude that's done like 30-plus saves multiple times on the best team in baseball that's going to win 100 games. Mm-hmm. I'll take my chances there. I think Devin Williams is a better pitcher, but when we're talking saves and whatnot, that's where I go Ryan Presley. It's kind of what you're talking about in a roundabout way. Like reliability-wise, Devin's awesome, but end of the season, he could definitely be traded. How many games are the Brewers going to win? They could be really good still, or they could really just suck. Like there's compared to being an Astro type thing. So that's the conundrum with Devin Williams. But talent, I will not deny that at all. If Devin Williams were to get traded, who on the roster are we looking to kind of back up that run with, or is he not even around right now?
I think it's got to be Matt Bush. I mean, that's like the only. You look at that bullpen. Like again, like this bullpen is not very good, in my opinion. It's definitely not as good as it has been in years past. I mean, you had Hader in the ninth, you had Williams in the eighth, you had like Boxberger in the seventh. Boxberger's gone, and so is Hader, obviously. So I think next in line would be Matt Bush, and Matt Bush is actually pretty solid. I mean, if you look at his numbers, like his, K per nine is 11.2. He does give up some home runs a little bit just because he's more of a fly ball pitcher. But he throws hard, and he has kind of like that. The closer stuff, I guess, is kind of the way I'd put it. 74 strikeouts and 59 and 2/3 innings last year. So, 3.47 ERA, 102 WHIP, and he does have a little bit of closer experience from his days in Texas. So, I would think that he would be next in line.
Gotcha. Any other prospects to potential? Like, I'm not a big prospect guy either. Like you mentioned, we talked Garrett Mitchell, we talked Frelick, we talked Joey. Like, those are the main dudes. But do we maybe see Ethan Small or Jason Alexander back in any fantasy role this year? Or they just kind of be backup starters that you might stream type thing, so don't worry about them draft day. Anybody else you think we might see at some point this year?
Yeah, nobody for on draft day to take. There would be like guys you'd pick up, I think. But one guy that is a little bit interesting is their number one prospect, Jackson Chourio. I don't know if he's gonna be up this year. He's super young, but there was a quote, I think it was from Council, saying that it was a possibility. I was like, wait a minute, really? Like, he's 18 last year, so he's gonna be 19 in March. And yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see. Maybe I don't know if he's like number 2 or number 3 prospect in baseball or something.
Another outfielder. My God.
Yeah.
On Fangraphs prospect rankings, which it's not Baseball America, but he's 5th according to Fangraphs. He's 1st on the Brew Crew. So another outfielder. So the real question then, Fish, is which outfielder gets traded?
Well, it's not going to be Yelich probably because his contract is just
because they got too many young outfielders right now, which usually it's tough to say, but there's a lot of talent right there.
Yeah, I mean, if Winker can bounce back and he can be of value, I could see him being moved. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I personally, I don't think we see Jackson Chourio this year. But I guess you never know, right? He did touch Double-A last year, so
we'll see because like on roster resource now they have the non-roster invitee marks by him, like Frelick and Weimer and Sky Bolt and Monty Harrison all have them. Jackson does not have one, so I don't even know if he'll be in minor league or he'll probably be in the minor league camp, not in the big boy camp. So it's a good problem to have if you're a Brewers fan, at least. Good problem to have. Any final thoughts on your Brew Crew heading into 2023 as we wrap this one up?
Yeah, I'm interested to see how they do this year. I liked some of the moves that they made. I didn't like the Hunter Renfroe trade just because that's such a huge bat to take out of a already kind of a poor lineup. But I like the top half of the Brewers lineup. I don't really like the bottom half as much unless we can see some of these guys like Sal Frelick come up and just lengthen the lineup a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, obviously they got the horses up top for starting pitching. They got Devin Williams at the back end, so that should be able to keep them in games. But you're going against like I love what the Cubs did in the offseason.
I lost you. I lost your volume.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no,
there it goes.
Yeah. But yeah, I like what the Cubs did. I like what the Cardinals did. So, it could be a tough division, dealing with those two teams. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do.
Yeah, it'll be fun. Another fun season, and with the balanced schedule, it'll be fun to see how the Central gets out of that one as well this season compared to years past. So we will go from there. But before we leave, let everybody know where they can find you and your awesome podcast and everything else going on. Yeah,
at Pilot Dial on Twitter, and we got we got 2 more episodes coming up in the Cut Fantasy Sports Podcast. 2 more coming up. Finish up starting pitching, and then we're going to get into some other fun things. So yeah, give us a follow. Check us out. Check out Ryan Venancio too. Give him a follow at Vend_Armbarn. The guy is absolutely incredible with the analytics and stuff like that. So yeah, check him out.
Yep, he's very, very good. As long as you can keep following people today, go do it. Otherwise, watch Twitter burn, which is entertaining to me as well. But yeah, make sure you follow the fish on Twitter. They're at Pile of Dial. I'm on Twitter at BDentric. This was your Benched with Bubba Milwaukee Brewers season preview. Catch you guys next time.